Hello. Karl Po is currently the Chief Operating Officer of JS Unitrade Merchandise. Prior to this role, he has been involved in various commercial and support functions in JS Unitrade in his over 10 years with the company. He has been a key driver of the company's transformation projects, preparing and enabling the company for the next stages of growth with a strong focus on people, systems, and tools. A graduate of BS Management from the Ateneo de Manila University, he believes in continuous learning by attending executive education courses, reading extensively, and listening to podcasts in order to keep himself abreast with the latest thinking and practices. He is also currently a director of Sintianti Development Corporation, the property development arm of the group, which includes, among others, Marco Polo Hotel Ortigas. Hello, Carl. Welcome.
Hi, Mr. Joe. Thank you for having me.
We're glad to have you. You know, I've always been looking for a next gen to interview, but somebody of from a company with big scale, no? And we're very fortunate to have your dad Samuel Po and yourself, and you're fortunate enough to give us different point of view, no? Your point of view and his point of view, no? But let me ask the very first question, Carl. What made you interested to join Unitrade? And I want to explain my first question because many next gen do not like to join their family company. What made you interested to join Unitrade?
Well, there's a very quick answer to that, Mr. Joe. My dad did a very good job brainwashing me early on.
So how was it? How did he do it?
Yeah, but kidding aside, it's I guess it was really a part of family life. My dad started the business, and he was the one who really built it up through the years. So growing up, I really saw how hard he worked on the company. It was there were early mornings, late nights, sometimes even weekends or holidays. So I guess it kind of piqued my curiosity in what's so important about this that someone would spend so much time on it. And of course, in the usual family of an entrepreneur, it's always talk about the business at dinner as well. And then, of course, later on, once I had a bit of a chance to also see about see or learn more about the company, then I saw that it was catering to families, to moms, to kids, and then eventually expanding the portfolio to other family members. So it was really about serving the most basic unit of our Filipino families, serving Filipino families. So and that was I guess that was a good
Exposure.
yeah, exposure for me. Yeah, and made me really interested in what this company was really about.
Okay, so in your house you talk over dinner and in casual conversation. But you remember the first time you were in Unitrade?
I can't say what exactly was the first time, but of course there were bits and pieces of memories about Unitrade. One of my earliest memories was actually so before my dad ventured into FMCG. He was into electrical supplies. So one of my earliest memories was, putting light switches into small little boxes that could be sold individually. Then eventually, there were more memories of, tagging along with my dad when he went on different supermarkets doing trade check as well.
So you're actually sharing with us a very important point, no? the point of early exposure in a business, especially in a family business, can increase the enthusiasm of wanting to join because you understand the business a bit more, no?
Mhm.
And thank you for sharing that. I want to, this session is preparing for the next gen, training the next gen. In other words, it's like, how to train your dragon, no?
Mhm.
And so can you tell us, Carl, from your point of view, what have been the phases and methodologies in your training program as a next?
Mhm. Yeah. Yes, there were different ways that I was trained. Of course, there's always the formal education part, I got a management degree, and also, of course, I had training. I joined training seminars and all of that for more specific knowledge. But also, there's a lot uh, of things to learn, or a lot of things I learned from even discussions at the dinner table, hearing the stories behind, I guess, some of the decisions that were made, um, and learning both from the successes coming out of those decisions and also some of the failures, or maybe miscalculations that perhaps I wasn't uh, aware of at that time. But later I was able to hear those stories from my dad. Um, then, of course, eventually, as I joined the business, also, having a seat at the table, not necessarily being able to make decisions, of course, but understanding and hearing out the different discussions or suggestions that were being made, uh, both from professional managers that we have in the company, as well as hearing the insights that my dad also has from the number of decades he has in the business. And of course, eventually, you also learn on the job. Um, I'm a big fan of like having maybe not as formal, but like essentially pre-mortems and post-mortems. So, thinking through possible risk areas before you dive into a project or really start it. And then afterwards, trying to understand also what made it succeed or maybe not succeed, and where the opportunity areas are for us to do a bit better next time. So these are, I think, good things to do to try to learn and on how we could do things better next time.
So what I'm learning from you, Carl, it's always a two-way process, no?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the company can give you information. In fact, you had information up close from the CEO, from your dad, no?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that is rarity. Maybe other people may not have access to the insight, to the inner working, to what was it like? What
Mm-hmm.
was on his mind at that time, no?
Mm-hmm.
But you had to also do your own initiative,
Mm-hmm.
to learn and to find your way, and to introduce a couple of other things too, no? Like you said, you like pre-mortem, post-mortem.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, companies do an evaluation, but sometimes it's too late, post-mortem, no? And
Right.
I always tell people, you operate on the patient while the patient is still alive, no?
Right.
I mean, what's the use of postmortem when you could have adjusted
Yeah,
even
midway. Yeah.
ahead of time,
Mm-hmm.
no? Midway, no? So very interesting sharing. And Carl, so one of the things that I'd like to explore more,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't mind, is that so when you had so when you earn a seat uh, at the table in Unitrade, so what was it like? What was the learning like? What were you told what to do, or it's really up to you what you want to learn?
Um, I think there were key areas that my dad thought I had to, I guess, learn more about that were quite critical. But at the same time, it wasn't like a formal path, you know. It was kind of okay, you join the company, now go look for things to do. You know. Yeah, actually that was one of the conversations we had early on. Parang, okay, management trainee, what do I do? And he was like, you go look for your own things to do. But I guess it also started with tagging along on his meetings as well, and you know, hearing about the different concerns and issues that were happening in the company. So that gave a bit of an, I guess, overview of the company's performance, and you know, but at the same time, I had to like try to come up with, I guess, mini projects on my own as well.
Yeah, and I think that's good, no? Because many people would have, would even, be willing to do so many things to be able to tag along and listen in a meeting and
Mm-hmm,
listen to what the conversation is like
mm-hmm,
and how negotiations are done.
mm-hmm,
And I think that's a very important, a very big advantage, no? But let's talk about challenges, no? What challenges have you encountered as a next gen while you're being trained on your way to COO? There's already succession planning. What
mm-hmm.
challenges have you encountered?
I guess the first would be wrong expectations. So the business, before I joined, my dad was the only family member. So it's almost all professional management, right? So when I first joined, I guess the first thing was maybe wrong expectations, um, and that would come in two different ways. First is maybe expecting that I was, I guess, that stereotypical entitled, you know, child of owner, where maybe I would expect to coast along or maybe not really do much. In fact, although this is outside the company, one of the questions I got from an acquaintance was what I did day to day, and whether all I did was, you know, play um, uh, video games and just come down to the office to sign checks. So no, that you know, that's a very big misconception. That this is what a child of owner would do. But on the other side, also there was also the kind of expectation where, you know, you're maybe the alter ego of your dad. You know that you know what you say goes. And but at that time, I was a fresh graduate. Sure, I had some background of the business, from what I heard from my dad and all of that, but you know, there is no way I could replicate the experience, the wisdom of what he had, uh, just like that. So I think the first thing was trying to manage that, the expectations of people in the company towards me. Um, there's there's also the office dynamics. Um, you know, you're seen as the child of the owner, no matter what you do.
True.
Yeah, and you have that close relationship and association to, of course, your family members. In my case, my dad. So there were things that people would do, um, to maybe help me, but that I think may have gotten in the way of my own learning, because those were things that supposedly in my role I would have to do, but because someone else did it without my knowledge, then that was something I never saw until much later.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and also, uh, you know, people would also do things to try to maybe hide a few of the things that maybe they would prefer me not to know as well, or maybe prefer my dad not to know. So these were, you know, yeah, they were dynamics to be aware of, being a, related to to my dad. Um, and I would say the third thing was managing or balancing the relationship with my dad in the office and also at home, because that can very easily spill over both ways, uh, and it's not necessarily that healthy.
But how do you do that? How do you now create boundaries in the office and at home? Is that also hard?
Yeah, it's that it's always a balance, you uh early on I tried to really have a clear demarcation. I'm not going to talk about work at home, but that's almost impossible to do in in a family business setting, especially in one where the business is such a big part of our family life now, and of course, very important. Um, so what I've tried to do is make sure that um, maybe more difficult conversations that you don't want to spill over into family life. Make sure you have them addressed in the office, so that yeah, of course, if there are strategic discussions or any of that, that's okay to have over the dinner table, or with the family, so also everyone is aware. But maybe more, yeah, more operational or more difficult discussions, I try to have that in the office so that it won't affect family life. Of course, I also don't want that it starts affecting other family relationships as well.
That's true. That's true. In fact, in my case, working with my wife
Mhm.
before COVID, we used to have an office. Now it's 100% work from home. No, there was a situation when my wife said, "Well, wait, we're already home."
Mhm.
And we had an agreement that if and I have a fertile mind, I have so many ideas, no? That we agreed that if I have idea, I email it to her, at night or on weekend, and it's up to her when she will read it on
Oh,
Monday or during office hours. And that was our boundary. It allows me to express myself, and it
mhm.
also allows that particular. I found it very funny in the beginning, but then I realized, maybe that could be another way of, making it win-win to everyone. No,
Yeah, yeah.
but I'm sure in the process of your conversation, how do you handle differences with your dad as the CEO?
Well, I think first is remember that you both have the best interests of the business at hand. Um, the ways and means, or opinions might be different, but that's the first thing to remember. And then I listen, because his points, his ideas, they're coming from the wealth of experience that he has. um, but uh, and that's not something that uh, I can replicate, obviously, and that's something that's unique to him. um, and I think there's a lot of things that we can pick out in terms of insights there. So I think first thing is listen. um, and I try to remove my own emotions. For example, if I have my ideas that are different from his, then after listening, try to understand what are the key insights that I might have missed as well, and try to tweak those suggestions and take those insights into account. Um, Sometimes it's worth backing off and leaving the discussion for another day if emotions are running too hot already. And maybe that would also give us both a better perspective in terms of what the other person is talking about. But I think also, for me at least, at the end of the day, it's clear to me that he's the CEO, he's the leader of the company, and if we really cannot agree on something, then I will need to follow his decision because he's the leader of the company. It's I guess it's a case of, if I was really unable to convince him about something, then we follow his way and see how that works out. I think it's very important to have that clear, I guess, hierarchy or responsibility.
I like what you said, Carl. There's a criterion involved, and it's really about, it's not about your interest, not about your dad as the CEO, his interest, but it's really about what's the common interest, what's the interest, how will the company be benefited, no? Which is important. After all, you try to run it as professionally.
Mm-hmm.
The second point that I have learned is really about the importance of communication, no?
Mm-hmm.
You not only communicate with humility, but you also communicate with empathy, no? And you communicate with humility, knowing that, hey, I am COO. At the end of the day, I may have differences, but the buck stops with the CEO. And at the end of the day, you'll have to, somebody is finally accountable,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody will have to follow that particular directions, no?
Mm-hmm.
And listening with empathy also is by way of understanding that all of us have our own strengths, no?
Mm-hmm.
And that he comes in with a lot of insight, experience, at the same time biases too, no?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just like every individual, we all have biases, no? And I think that's something that you shared with us. I'm saying it in a different way, no?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's what you actually said, and I really like it in terms of the ability to come. And I've seen so many relationship between generation sour because the person talks about himself.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about the interests of the business. It's about, my opinion is correct.
Mm-hmm.
But your perspective is totally different, and I respect you for that. I think it's a wonderful perspective. It is something that has a lot of empathy involved, no? So do you have here's my last question, Carl. Do you have a wish list as a next gen? So if you were to redesign your career, which part would you stop doing and which part would you start doing?
I guess I'll talk about first which parts I liked. So I like that there's very open and transparent and objective discussions, both formally in meetings as well as outside. And there's a lot of sharing of ideas there. There's a lot of alignment that happens during those discussions, and they're not necessarily really specifically about the business only, but maybe also about what's happening in the world, and you get to pick those ideas as well for insights. I also like that my dad is very open to new ideas, new ways of doing, and as a part of that, investing in those ideas. From some of my friends who are also, I guess, a next gen working with their family businesses. One of the common challenges I hear is that maybe their parents or maybe their grandparents are not so open to new ideas. They are a bit more conservative. They think that what they've been doing has given them a lot of success, and therefore they should continue that. They would prefer not to um, invest behind, say, for example, digitalization, because the way we've done it is working, and it's uh, cheaper, but that's not how my dad has operated, and he's been very open to my ideas as well in terms of how we need to set the company up for, I guess, the next stage of growth. And as a result of that, that's why we've invested in the last 5-6 years a lot in terms of digital capabilities of the company. And I guess the third thing that I liked was that there's a lot of um, support from my dad, and a lot and parang clearly increasing responsibility that is being given. So I think that motivates me a lot. Um, Probably one thing that I would have wanted more was maybe clearer expectations. But so as I shared earlier, it was really you join a company, I followed him in his meetings, but I had to look for my own projects, my own try to suggest ideas on my own. So there wasn't a lot of clear expectations in terms of how to start. So I think maybe that having a bit clearer expectations would have helped a bit more in terms of focusing where to start. But I guess in a way that might also be training. As an entrepreneur, you don't there's no clear expectations really, and you really need to find your own opportunities. So that may also be a good thing.
Yeah, on the positive side, in fact, I look at it as your first test, which is,
Yeah.
uh, from the perspective of the CEO, let's
Mhm.
see whether he will have initiative.
Right. Yeah.
So that's a very important point, no? So, and then I said, I was telling myself, I said, wow, that's to be able to choose your own project, in fact, is
Hmm.
quite rare, no? I mean,
Hmm.
you do whatever is you're passionate about.
Hmm.
But there's a second learning that from your talk, no, is that it's not just about a business relationship. There is a personal relationship that is nurtured, no, formally and informally, and it's a two-way thing, no. Openness of ideas, of listening.
Yeah.
You listen to him, he listened to you, and long-term thinking, no, which could have changed the whole thing.
Hmm.
And can you imagine? I have mentored quite a number of people, and they actually complain to me, that when they take over, they will be explaining, this is how we became successful. So
Hmm.
try to do something similar,
Yeah.
and it's very frustrating
Hmm.
on the part of the next gen, no, because the success formula in the past may not be the success formula in the future, no.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So in a way, what you're telling us is similar to the questions that I asked. Is every day we ask ourselves, what do we start doing and
Hmm.
what do we stop doing
Hmm.
to the next level of our success? No?
Hmm.
And so
Wow.
with that, thank you for this interview. I admire your wisdom, Carl. And there's a lot of thing, very meaty sharing from you, Carl. And thank you for allowing us to interview you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. The pleasure and honor was all mine, Mr. Joe. Thank you for having me.